I took your advice, Armin, and I have gone to some protests to support the anti-regime protest. It was very wholesome. My question is, even though I do of course support the Shah and is against the regime, is it really accurate to describe Mohammad Reza, to compare him to the King of Britain or the King of Norway, since those kings can't really have policies and such he did? So even though he was a good ruler, is it really accurate to say he was constitutional monarch or compare him to the monarchs of Europe now?
All right. So would you mind closing your mic? I'm getting echo. You're talking about comparing Mohammad Reza Shah to the monarchs in Europe, right? All right. So
Yes.
okay, so constitutional monarchy limits the monarch, but in different degrees. Okay, so if you look at the monarchs in Europe, you might get the impression that a constitutional monarchy is a form of monarchy where the king has basically zero, like close to zero executive power, and like it's just ceremonial, symbolic role, right? But constitutional monarchy is a type of monarchy where the king is limited, but not necessarily that limited. So you could still have a king in a constitutional monarchy that you give him more roles, for example, the roles that the king in the UK has, for example. And that would still be a constitutional monarchy. As long as you have a constitution that limits the monarch and everyone else, actually, the constitution limits everybody in the government, not just the king. And as long as you have like the sovereignty coming from the people, and usually that is achieved through having a parliament, having members of parliaments where the people vote for, having a prime minister, having checks and balances. As long as you have something like that, where basically the ability to rule and govern is directed from the people to whoever is in charge, including the king, including the prime minister, you are basically technically still a republic. And if you're a monarchy, you're a constitutional monarchy, you have a constitution that limits the ability of the king, the prime minister, and every other politician, and the people. It limits the people as well, right? No, Mohammad Reza Shah was different from the current monarchs in the UK, given that he had much more of much more executive power than they do. For example, Mohammad Reza Shah had to approve every single minister and could remove every single minister, right? So laws had to be approved by him. The prime minister had to be approved by him. He could remove the prime minister. And this is why, by the way, according to the constitution of the Iran, back when the Shah was in power, the prime minister could be removed by the Shah, meaning that meaning that the Shah did not do a coup against Mossadegh, as so many people say, because a coup needs to be legal, and Mohammad Reza Shah had every right, according to the constitution, to remove the prime minister. I don't know if you could do that in the UK or not, but Mohammad Reza Shah was completely within his legal rights to remove the prime minister from power. And according to the constitution, the Shah was above the prime minister, and usually coups happen when somebody below a position removes somebody above them. So the Shah removing Mossadegh is not a coup. So it's not illegal. It wasn't illegal, and it was from above rather than from below. So it doesn't meet the two criteria for something being a coup. So no, he was different, but still, it was still a constitutional monarchy. And also, if I'm going to add something in going forward, if Iran becomes a constitutional monarchy again, I do believe that our king, our Shah in the future, needs to have more of a role than just ceremonial and symbolic. I think that it fits Iran culture, and it fits our history, and it actually, for our politics, it does make sense for the Shah to have more of a role in our politics than just something ceremonial. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
And I put a two in there because I wanted to add a few things. Iran's constitution, we had the constitution since 1906. and somebody was asking if Mohammad Reza Shah was an absolute monarch. And the answer to that is no, he was not, because the constitution was above him. And since 1906, a few times there were some articles in the constitution that were revised, and that revision was not just done by the king, but it took debates and it took parliament members' votes, and it took a long process to revise one single article in the constitution. So that already tells us that he was not an absolute monarch, because then he could just do whatever he wanted. But he was abiding by the constitution that Iran had since 1906. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
That's a good point. Based on that, I would also want to mention something, because a lot of people think that the king having executive power and other roles means that it's undemocratic, but it's not, because if the Shah is getting his authority and his ability to rule from the people, the Shah's position is democratic, right? So a lot of people think democracy means that every single politician have to be directly elected by the people, but that doesn't make any sense, because, for example, in the United States, the Supreme Court judges, they're not directly elected by the people, but for some one way or another, there are many politicians in the United States that are not directly elected by the people, but they're still politicians, right? But for example, in Iran, we know that the monarchy is still democratic, because first we're going to have a referendum, the people saying whether or not they want a monarchy, and if they say no, then we're not going to have a monarchy. So in fact, not in a case where the people want a monarchy and you don't give them a monarchy, then that's on them. Not having a monarchy would be undemocratic. The most democratic thing to do in a country where people want a monarchy is to give them monarchy. So this idea that monarchy is against democracy, not really. If the people want monarchy, then it's against democracy to take that away from them. And also, then the people, after they vote for whether or not they want a monarchy or something else, if they vote for monarchy, they still have a say in how this is formed, because then the next election will be for the council, the assembly of founders, or the council of founders, shora, council of founders, which is the people who are going to write the constitution. So the Iranian people, after they choose, for example, constitutional monarchy, then they have to choose their founding fathers, which is very democratic, by the way, because the United States didn't choose its founding fathers, okay? But we are going to choose our founding fathers in an election. So those founding fathers that the Iranian people would elect as the founding fathers, then they will go write the constitution, and when they write the constitution, they will decide the process of choosing the king in the constitution. And then still, we're still not done. Then the constitution will be shown to the public, and then there will be a third election. Okay, so the first election was a referendum to see if we want a constitutional monarchy or not. The second election was for the people to pick the people who write the constitution. The third election will be for the people to read the constitution and then vote yes or no to this new constitution. And if they vote no, they have to go back and write another one. And then if they vote yes for the constitution, then we're going to have the fourth election, which is going to be for the members of the parliament, so that we could finally have a parliament and a prime minister. So again, the king will not be elected directly by the people, but the people who will write in the constitution on how the king is selected will be elected by the people, and that is democracy.
Correct. Rick, you wanted to respond to this? Let's keep it at 1 minute, because we have a little over 5 more minutes left, and we have 3 people that want to speak
And,
as well. Are you here,
and
Rick?
guys, after I leave, you guys could keep talking, by the way. Oh, that's the Rafshakaviani. That's amazing. Love it. Thank you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Rick, you're not here. Okay, Jim, you wanted a new topic?
Yes, I remember you, Armin, talking with Goldie last week very briefly about Iranian history, and this gets me curious because I'm concerned about political assassination and Shia Islam's history with that. What do you guys know, and especially you, what do you know about the Nizari Ismailis, the assassin order in the Crusades, who they really were, what their capabilities were?
So I know that a lot of people, a lot of the assassinations that they were doing were against not the Christians or the Knights Templars. They were in, like, they had internal assassinations, different important people. I know Western, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Okay, so these are the original assassins. Okay, and these were the original people within Islam that went on suicide missions, right? Because they were told, they were trained on how to go and assassinate a very important person, but they were never trained on how to get out of there, right? So those are the original suicide. It's not a suicide bomber, but pretty close to that, right? But I read somewhere that this whole them versus the Knight Templars and all of that is through this Western perspective, and a lot of their training and everything was basically against them against other Sunni leaders, because they were Shias, right? A different type of Shia. They were not 12er Shia Muslims, but they were also the Shia.
Yeah,
I
it's
think they were
crazy.
the first. Yes, I think they were the first Shias. No, not the first, but one of the first people Shias that actually managed to rule. Right, we have a Shia government in Egypt as well. So those are what I know about them. But did you have something more specific in mind regarding this? Because how's
Yeah,
that? Are you?
yeah.
Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
what I mean by that, I asked Jeffrey briefly about it, and I'll probably have to do this at another time for full depth. I'm just curious what the IRGC's ability and the Islamic regime's ability to carry out such assassinations like that is today. And obviously, they're not the same, but I thought there might have
Yeah.
been lineage of that all the way on down loosely.
Not really. If there is, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the connection, right? We don't have any teachings in Islam that endorses suicide missions, right? And other than them, these Ismailis, the only other thing that we saw in history that eventually came close to what the Muslims are doing now was the kamikaze in Japan, right? But the original story, at least from modern Islamic history, that all of a sudden made suicide bombing popular is Hossein Fahmideh, the story of Hossein Fahmideh, which
Mhm.
we all grew up with in school, in elementary school. This kid, and it was about the Iran-Iraq war. So,
Mhm.
Nara, you remember this in school? We had the Hossein Fahmideh
Yes,
story in our.
I
Yes.
specifically remember the sketches that we had in the textbook.
Yeah. Yes. So we all grew up with the story of Hussein, this 12-year-old kid, I think 12 years old, in Iran-Iraq war, which now that I think about it is an admission that the Islamic Republic had child soldiers. Holy shit, I just realized that was an admission that they had child soldiers, right? So a 12-year-old soldier on the Iranian side's army in the Iran-Iraq war, he basically, and by the way, this story is fake because nothing about this makes any sense. Apparently he put grenades on himself, and then he went under an Iraqi tank, and then he blew up the Iraqi tank, and he's considered to be a great hero in the history of the Islamic Republic and everything, and his picture was on the one of the bills, like the currency of the Islamic Republic money as well. But apparently, all of that story was fake. All of that story was fake, and I don't think that's how grenades work, because they didn't say a bomb. They didn't say a suicide bomb. They specifically mentioned grenades. I don't think you could do that. I might be wrong about that, but that was a very popular story that we all grew up with as this act of sacrifice of this 12-year-old soldier against the Iraqis. And that was before Al Qaeda and ISIS and all of these other suicide bombers and 9/11. So it was this idea of this is a way to fight was popularized by the Islamic Republic before the Sunnis picked it up.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Yeah.